The untold truth about people who escaped death is supposed to be final. Once a doctor confirms it, once the paperwork is signed, once the body is prepared and the world begins to mourn, the chapter is meant to close forever. Families cry, graves are dug, names are written on stone, and life moves on. Society depends on death being permanent. It gives meaning to endings. It allows the living to grieve, to heal, and eventually to forget. But history quietly tells a much more disturbing story, one that most people never hear. Throughout time, there have been individuals who are not missing, not presumed gone, but officially declared dead by doctors, governments, and institutions, only to return later, alive. Some woke up inside coffins. Some reappeared years after funerals were held in their name. Others survived physically but lost their identity so completely that they became invisible to the world they once belonged to. These are not myths or legends. These are documented cases of people who escape death, only to discover that surviving it often comes with a price far worse than dying. In the late 19th century, medicine was limited, rushed, and often wrong. One of the most chilling examples of this involved a man named Francisco Goya. Francisco suddenly fell ill and collapsed. Doctors examined him and found no pulse, no response, no visible signs of life. In that era, there were no advanced machines to confirm brain activity or minimal heart function. If a body appeared still and cold, death was declared. His family was informed, grief followed quickly, and burial preparations began almost immediately, as was common at the time. Francisco was washed, dressed, placed into a wooden coffin, and taken to be buried. There was no delay, no waiting period, no second check. During the funeral service, as prayers were spoken and mourners stood silently, something unexplainable happened. A faint sound broke through the silence. At first, it was barely noticeable, something so subtle it could have been imagined. People dismissed it, assuming grief was playing tricks on their minds. But the sound continued. It grew louder, more deliberate, scratching, coming from inside the coffin. Panic spread through the crowd as fear replaced mourning. The coffin was opened, and Francisco was alive. His fingers were torn and bleeding from desperately clawing at the wood in complete darkness, fighting for air, fighting for life. He gasped as though he had returned from another world entirely. Francisco survived being buried alive, but survival did not mean freedom. From that moment on, he was never the same person. He became withdrawn, paranoid, and deeply disturbed. Friends and family said he would sit alone for hours, staring into nothing, whispering to himself. He developed an obsession with death, convinced it was still following him. For the rest of his life, he repeatedly wrote and painted the same sentence over and over again, as though trying to convince himself it was true. I am still alive. His body escaped death, but his mind never truly returned. Sometimes, escaping death does not damage the mind alone. Sometimes, it erases a person entirely. In the late 20th century, a man named Carlos was involved in a serious car accident. Emergency services arrived, assessed the scene, and identified a body as his. Medical professionals confirmed the death. Official records were filed. His name was entered into government systems as deceased. To society, Carlos no longer existed. His life ended on paper that day. Years later, police arrested a man suspected of identity fraud. He was using documents belonging to Carlos. Fingerprints were taken. Records were checked. And that was when authorities made a horrifying discovery. The fingerprints matched a man who had been declared dead years earlier. Carlos had never actually died. Through a chain of bureaucratic errors and mistaken identity, the wrong person had been pronounced dead, and Carlos had been erased instead. Legally, he was a dead man walking. He could not reclaim his identity. He could not correct the records. He could not return to the life he once had. Imagine being alive but officially non-existent, unable to open accounts, unable to prove who you are, unable to participate fully in society. Carlos watched the world move on without him. He escaped death, but lost his place among the living. In other cases, escaping death leads only to something more horrifying. In Russia, a woman named Figiliu Mukametsianova suddenly collapsed at home. Emergency services were called, and doctors examined her carefully. They pronounced her dead. Her husband was devastated, overwhelmed with grief. Funeral arrangements began quickly, but inside the coffin, something unimaginable happened. Figiliu regained consciousness. She woke up in total darkness, unable to move, unable to understand where she was. As awareness returned, panic set in. She screamed and clawed at the interior of the coffin, fighting against the realization that she had been buried alive. By the time help arrived, the shock had overwhelmed her body. She died shortly afterward. She escaped death once, only to be killed by the terror of realizing she had escaped it too late. Not all who escape death wake up underground. Some vanish so completely that death seems like the only explanation. A fisherman once disappeared during a violent storm at sea. His boat was later found empty, drifting alone on the water. No body was recovered. After months of searching, authorities declared him dead. A memorial was held. His family mourned and slowly tried to move on. 5 years later, he walked into a small coastal village. He was thin, scarred, sunburned, and barely recognizable. For years, he had survived by drifting between islands, catching raw fish with his hands, and drinking rainwater. He lived without shelter, without human contact, guided only by instinct and survival. When asked how he endured it, he gave a chilling answer. He said the ocean did not want him dead. Escaping death did not return him to the life he lost. It only made him a stranger to it. Many people who escape death experience something worse than dying. They lose their sense of safety. They lose their trust in reality. They lose their understanding of where they belong. Some develop lifelong trauma, replaying their near-death experiences endlessly in their minds. Some become obsessed with death, convinced it is still watching them, waiting for another chance. Others withdraw completely from society, unable to reconnect with a world that feels unfamiliar and hostile. They exist in a strange space between life and death, alive but altered, breathing but broken. And here is the most disturbing thought of all. Somewhere in the world right now, someone listed as dead may still be breathing, living quietly, watching life continue without them. They may walk past their old home. They may hear their name spoken in the past tense. They may exist as a ghost among the living. They escaped death, but they never truly escaped its shadow. If these stories unsettled you, subscribe to Untold Truth, because the next story makes this one look peaceful.